thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 2 of the Revelation of St. John. An article taken from Manly P. Hall's The Stundents Monthly Letter, April 1938. It is usual to represent the Book of Revelation as a scroll from which are suspended 7 seals. These seals represent a mystery, a secret which cannot easily be revealed because it is sealed up in the mysteries. By the seals is also to be understood the 7 keys of the scriptures, by the possession of which the initiate may behold all mysteries and all truth. Upon the opening of the first seal, a horseman rode forth upon a white horse. Revelation 6:2. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth, conquering and to conquer. Here, again, is the moon and the bow of Diana. When the second seal was opened, a red horse came forth, and he who rode upon the horse was given a great sword to take peace upon the earth. The second horse and rider represent the sun, spelled S-U-N. Upon the opening of the third seal, a black horse came forth, and he who sat upon the horse had a balance in his hand. Revelation 6:6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Oil and wine represent soul and spirit, and the barley and wheat the lower nature of man. The destroyer upon the black horse is Saturn. The 4th seal, when opened, gave forth a pale horse, and the name of him that sat upon it was Death. Hell followed him. The pale horse is Venus, and Venus is Lucifer, the rebel angel whose light was taken from him. The 5th seal is the seal of the martyrs who cried out in a loud voice. Revelation 6:10. How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? The 5th seal is Mars, the seal of blood. The 6th seal, when it was opened, gave forth a great earthquake. The stars fell from heaven, the sun became black, and a great and mighty motion moved the heaven and the earth, and the kings of the earth hid themselves. The 6th seal is Jupiter. The 7th seal was called the Great Silence. And out of the silence, at the sounding of the trumpet of the 7th angel, appeared a mystery called the woman clothed with the sun, who was bearing a man-child. This 7th seal is Mercury, which completes the great vessels of wrath. When the seals were opened, the power of them fell upon the earth and upon all natures. Therefore, these modes of energy were represented as 7 vials which poured out their contents upon the world. The story of the woman clothed in the sun who went forth into the wilderness to give birth to her man-child is susceptible of a most prophetic interpretation. About the time of the beginning of the Christian era, the temple at Jerusalem was destroyed and the Alexandrian libraries were burned. Wisdom departed into the desert, where it was cultured and guarded by the Arabs for nearly 1,000 years, and then returned again to Europe by the way of Moorish Spain. Astronomically speaking, the woman clothed with the sun is the position of the sun in Virgo, which corresponds with the present Catholic feast of the Assumption of the Virgin, in which she is lifted up in glory with her son. The Last Judgment is derived almost completely from the metaphysics of Egypt. According to the Egyptians, the human being is born with 7 souls, which are in a way the potential powers of the 7 planets in man. The souls are manifestations through the 7 senses, the 7 vital organs, and the 7 bodily systems. Each of the 7 souls has its planetary name. Saturn is the contemplative or rational soul. Jupiter is the reasonable soul. Mars is the impulsive soul. The Sun is the vitative soul. Venus is the amative soul. Mercury is the intellectual soul, and the Moon is the vegetative or generative soul. These 7 souls together are the bodies of a self, which is the ruler of the entire bodily economy. These souls may be lost, one or more of them, by the misuse of the qualities which they represent. In the Book of the Dead, Papyrus of Ani, the spirit of the deceased, speaking from the urn of the heart, beseeches Osiris, "Let me not perish with the king that ruleth for a day." This is the personality. In each life we have a personal complex, which is a king ruling for a day. After death, the complex is broken up and the 7 souls return to 7 planets, unless initiation has bound them together in a spiritual personality. In the Great Hall of Amathai, in the room of the columns of the twin truths, the beam and the balance were set up for the last judgment. The 12 assessors, this is where we got the modern jury from, were seated to decide the verdict. Thoth, lord of the rotting tablet, prepared to sit down the findings. Anubis, the jackal-headed, brings in the heart of the departed, whose Ka, or ethereal self, is also presented to behold the judgment. Osiris, enthroned, his body filled with eyes, presides over the weighing. The crocodile-headed Set waits to devour the heart of the unworthy. And Cynocephalus, the ape of wisdom, sits on the beam of the balance. The feather Ma'at is placed upon the scales and soul is weighed. If the deceased is perfect in the negative confession of faith, "I have not committed," etc., it goes forth into the plains of Aurau, where the reeds are long, and there is happiness for the day that has no night. If the 7 souls are lifted up, they become a 7-headed creature, but those parts which fell are judged unworthy of the resurrection and are cast into darkness. The outer darkness represents the various planes of the universe from which these souls have come. Here each disintegrates into a primal substance, resulting in the picturing of the 7 hells. But it is not the spirit that goes to these planes of punishment, but the cast-off souls which are slowly destroyed and their essences return to the planes from which they came. The Sakotaza, or weighing of the soul, has been taken bodily from the Egyptian rites and, with only a few interpolations and changes, has been made the last judgment of Revelation. The dead who rise from their graves at the sound of Gabriel's trumpet is a mystery of initiation. They arise not from the earth, but from their bodies into the spiritual state. The New Jerusalem consummates the mystical drama. Here is the city, 4 square, its gates and walls of jewels, adorned as a bride. The New Jerusalem should not be regarded as a city, or even as a symbol of a place. The New Jerusalem is the perfected and redeemed measure and proportion of the initiate. He himself is a sanctified and holy place adorned as a bride. It was an early Christian custom for those entering sacred orders to be united by a mystical marriage with Christ. They indeed were the brides of the Lamb. As a whole, the church itself theoretically was a bride ready to be united with truth, to be lifted up into holy communion with the Most High. The New Jerusalem is not lighted by the sun nor by the moon, but the Lamb is the light thereof. Its jeweled foundation is the breastplate of the old tabernacle. It is St. Augustine's city of God. According to the Platonist, those who had received the mysteries, that is, according to Christendom, had been taken into the ecclesia, whereas a race apart. The old pagan dialogues describe the sages who met in their groves far from the abode of men, and here reasoned together upon the mysteries of the universe. The New Jerusalem, therefore, is the temple of the greater mysteries, the house built without the sound of hammer or the voice of workmen, which is eternal in the heavens. It is the city of the sun, existing in the paradisiacal sphere, from which men fell in the book of Genesis. According to Jacob Bayham, the New Jerusalem is the redeemed Adam, the man lifted up by the mystery of Christ. It is, therefore, a spiritual symbol of a mystical state of being, where those dwell together who have received the light. In the parable of the prodigal son is described a man who went from his father's house and wasted his substance among the flesh pots of Egypt. He then became a keeper of swine, less than the least. But after these sad adventures, he returned to his father's house, sadder but wiser, and rejoiced to remain there. In the hymn of the Robe of Glory, a Gnostic fragment, is set forth the story of one who traveled far and forgot the land from which he came. As he wandered among the bazaars and shops of Egypt, he found no happiness or satisfaction, for dimly through his forgetfulness he sensed his participation in some other life long forgotten. In the Grail legends, there is the story of Parsifal, the godless fool, who having entered the castle of the Grail, there beheld a great mystery which was beyond his understanding. He therefore was sent forth again into the world, and after grievous sufferings, he again discovered the castle of the Grail. All these stories have an identical meaning. Like the Odyssey of Homer, they describe the wanderings of the soul in search of its own far distant land. In the Apocalypse is set forth a strange, fantastic pageantry, the story of the mysteries. It seems as though the book had been taken bodily from some learned and ancient rite. It is the only book that has descended to us in which the rituals of the mysteries are openly described. The study of it must completely change the Christian viewpoint. The understanding of it must bring a universal perspective, wider far than the corners of Christendom. Conclusion. It is impossible in a few hundred pages to interpret the mysteries of the Old and New Testaments. All that we can do is remind each and every Bible student that there is a mystery, not apparent to the mind alone, nor the reason, but a mystery that must be experienced inwardly through realization. Historically, the Bible is of little value. Its literary excellence comes not from the original, but from the repeated re-editing to match the scholarship of the times. Its strength lies in the presentation of the mystery teaching of ancient Israel and early Greece. It is a book of comparative religion and worthless to the individual who perceives Christianity to be a unique revelation. It is read weekly by thousands of churches of Christendom, but remains sealed with 7 seals until the individual seeker opens it with his own scholarship and understanding. The first step must be a serene tolerance, even better, a sublime realization that the mysteries of God have been given in all time to all people according to their capacity to understand. If you would read the Bible intellectually, you must read certain commentaries by which its keys are made to turn the ancient lock. The following are some of the most important commentaries. The 6 books of Proclus on the Theology of Plato, translated by Thomas Tyler, London 1816. The Gnostics and Their Remains by C.W. King, London 1887. Pettis Sophia, translated by G.R.S. Bede, Theosophical Publishing Society, London 1896. The Book of Beginnings by Gerald Massey, London 1881. The Natural Genesis by Gerald Massey, London 1883. Egypt, the Light of the World by Gerald Massey, London 1907. The Gabers of Hebron by Samuel Fells Dunlap, New York 1898. The Historical Library of Diodorus the Siculan, Diodorus Siculus, various translations. The Book of the Dead, various translations. The Jewish Wars by Josephus, various translations. The Mishnah, various translations. The Babylonian Talmud. The Jerusalem Talmud. Sefer HaZohar. Sefer Zetzerah, the Book of Foundation and the 32 Paths of Wisdom, translated by W.M. Wynne Westcott, Theosophical Publishing Society, London 1893, translated by Knut Stenring, W.M. Ryder and Son, London 1919. The Guide for the Perplexed by Moses Maimonides, translated from the original Arabic text by M. Friedlander, E. P. Dutton and Company, New York 1919. The Writings of St. Chrysostom. The Writings of Origen. All of these works are available in English, Many can be secured from your own library or borrowed by your library from the Library of Congress for your use. Through an understanding of the origins and developments and the beliefs relevant to Christianity, it is possible to understand at least in part the Gnostic mysteries in the New Testament. You will also gain some insight into the changes and interpolations which have been made, and so have crippled the text. It is not merely a desire for scholarship that should impel this research, but rather a desire for understanding and a true insight into the mysteries of the Scriptures. The Holy Bible is the sacred book of Christendom, the spiritual guide of nearly 800 million people, a work so widely diffused throughout human society and so intensive a part of the lives of human beings, should be read with understanding, with some grasp of the broader meanings and deeper inferences. Superficiality has led to intolerance, but depth of scholarship will bring about an adequate tolerance. We should remind you that other peoples also have their sacred books, writings which have guided moral conduct and spiritual aspirations for centuries. These scriptures of non-Christian peoples should receive the same veneration and the same research that is accorded to our more familiar writings. All the Bibles of the world united together reveal one spiritual tradition. They all bear witness to an enlightenment which is imperishable and which has been passed on from age to age as a priceless heritage of wisdom. Every person who is a student of the Christian Bible should read the principal non-Christian scriptures not critically to point out their defects, but with a sincere desire to increase his own knowledge through a wider acquaintance with the inspired writings. In the last 25 years, there has been a considerable breaking down of religious prejudices. The sacred books of other peoples are now available to all who desire to read them. Read first the Quran, its inspiration seated in the Christian revelation, then the Dhammapada, the great Buddhist scripture of the law, then some small section of the Indian writings, such as the Bhagavad Gita. From that, pass to the Chinese, read the great Confucian classics, and Lao Tzu's Lao De King. When you have made this brief survey, ask yourself sincerely if each of these sacred books has not added something to your inspiration or clarified some point of spiritual conduct. In a world torn by materialistic beliefs, these noble and inspired writings give added courage to meet the problems of the day. Examine several editions of the Christian Bible, as for example, compare the King James Version with the modern Revised Edition and a recent publication, the Bible as Living Literature. Consider the polyglots and get a parallel Greek-English text. You will make many interesting discoveries. You will find upon the skeleton of the Greek text has been built the beautiful version that we know. We will discover numerous errors and alternative renderings and slowly recover from the infallibility complex from which so many Orthodox Bible readers seem to suffer. Read the Vulgate, the Septuagint, and get a good dictionary of English-Hebrew terms. These will all prove valuable. They will not destroy your faith in the Bible, but they will injure your faith in some of its translators. You will see the uselessness of picking phrases to pieces and trying to think in terms of jots and tittles. You will be free to consider the larger issues. The Christian Bible as we know it today is a fragment of the Christian traditions of the 1st and 2nd centuries. This fragment was arbitrarily preserved and the rest destroyed. Politics and policy played a large part in the compilation. Still, with all its faults and with all its misinterpretations, the Christian Bible is the greatest book in English literature. But like most other great books, it must be approached with understanding, gentleness, impersonality, and a sincere desire to find truth. Sincerely yours, Manly P. Hall. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.